The dark side of Sweden. The real reasons you should avoid living there. Sweden has an image of being a progressive, liberal country that is friendly to outsiders and, above all else, wholesome. This wholesomeness is so widespread that even people who have never visited Sweden believe it is the unrivaled home of happy hikers, hot gingerbread houses, and lovable elk. That isn't to say there isn't any truth behind these stereotypes about Sweden. It truly is one of the happiest countries in the world, and many visitors love its lush fjords and abundant wildlife. However, like every other country in the world, Sweden has a dark side that only locals know about. It's not just dark because everything seems to be black, red and yellow as you will come to see. Rather, its reputation for being wholesome is precisely why you shouldn't consider moving there. 1. Taxes in Sweden are outrageously high. As with many other European countries, Sweden boasts an impressive social safety net that includes free healthcare, subsidized higher education, generous parental leave policies, and a pension system that will guarantee you receive 90% of your salary when you retire. However, all of these benefits come with a steep price: high taxes. The top income tax rate in Sweden is 57%, although wealthier Swedes will often pay less due to deductions and credits. There is also a 25% sales tax on just about everything, and a broad value-added tax, VAT, that applies to services as well as goods. The cost of living in Sweden is also high, due to the high salaries that its citizens are expected to earn, in order to make ends meet. This is because the government heavily subsidizes low-income families, even paying their electricity bills. 2. The culture can be incredibly hostile to foreigners. The Swedish government is known for having a very large and active hand in regulating Swedish culture and society. This has led to a widespread culture of political correctness and censorship that is hostile to free expression and open debate. Swedish comedians have even created a term for the self-censorship that has resulted from the government's heavy-handed approach. Skaggisbrad, beardbread, a reference to the fact that people are so fearful of saying something that might offend that they cut off their mouths with their beards. The government is well known for controlling the Swedish press with an iron fist, often pressuring journalists to censor themselves, or even fire employees who have said or done something that the government doesn't like. As a result of this political correctness, it can be incredibly difficult for newcomers to fit into Swedish society. 3. There's an immense discrimination problem. Discrimination is a serious problem in Sweden, particularly against migrants and people of African and Asian descent. The Swedish Crime Statistics Agency has even admitted that it likely has a racist bias in its methodology, including a disproportionate focus on crimes in heavily migrant-populated areas. This has contributed to a growing culture of xenophobia in Sweden, with many people rejecting immigrants and refugees from places like Afghanistan, Syria, and Iraq. Some have even been known to torch refugee housing, and others have formed mobs to hunt down and beat up migrants. Some even argue that the Swedish government actually encourages this discrimination by making migrants and refugees responsible for an enormous influx of crime, even though studies have shown that immigrants are actually less prone to crime than Swedes. This discrimination has also led to a culture of segregated ethnic enclaves, with many people of African and Asian descent living in neighborhoods that have been neglected by the government due to their high migrant population. 4. Desperately bad housing conditions. The high taxes that Swedes pay go primarily to pay for their social safety net, which includes a massive public housing sector that provides housing for Swedes who can't afford it. However, even with the government's heavy involvement in the housing sector, Swedish residents still have to wait years to receive a spot in one of these social housing units. Meanwhile, people who are in the country illegally often get free housing, as a result of the government's inability to deport migrants who commit crimes or have no legal right to stay in Sweden. This has led to a large surplus of unoccupied housing units in Sweden, but the government is unable to sell them because they are heavily subsidized. Instead, the government gives these houses to people on the waiting list who, according to the government, need them more than the current owners, who have paid off their mortgages and are struggling to find a new place after being evicted. As a result, people who have waited years for housing are often given housing that is in desperate need of repairs, and has been left completely uninhabited for years. 5. Overregulation of workplace safety. Sweden has some of the most rigorous workplace safety laws in the world, often requiring employers to invest millions of dollars in safety equipment that is rarely used and does nothing to increase productivity. This overregulation has led to some absurd situations, such as the Swedish Transport Administration hiring an artificial intelligence company to install sensors on the looms of weaving machines in order to determine if workers are manually pressing the looms too hard. Such regulations have also led to a workplace safety culture that discourages employees from speaking up about dangerous conditions. This is because, like all other aspects of Swedish society, workplace safety is extremely hierarchical and focused on blind obedience to authority. This has led to many cases of people dying on the job, due to the fact that they were too afraid to speak up about a dangerous situation. 6. Strict immigration laws. Sweden has a very strict approach to immigration, particularly with refugees fleeing their war-torn countries in search of asylum. While the average wait time for an asylum application to be processed is 15 months, the Swedish government will only grant permanent residence to approximately half of all applicants. This has led to thousands of refugees fleeing the country, often to Denmark, while they await the government's decision. This strict immigration policy has also led to the government denying entry to Syrian doctors and other professionals who have fled their country to escape the war. 7. Migrant crime problems. Because immigration is so heavily regulated in Sweden, many migrants arrive in the country illegally and are forced to live in hidden, migrant-only neighborhoods. This has led to an increase in migrant crime, particularly crimes of robbery, burglary, and sexual assault. While some of these crimes are committed by people who have been granted asylum in Sweden, many more are committed by people who have been denied residence and are living in the country illegally. Some have even suggested that the government is covering up migrant crime rates because it would reflect poorly on the country's immigration policy. This crime has led to the rise of vigilante groups in Sweden that patrol migrant neighborhoods and hunt down, assault, and even kill people they suspect to be criminals. 8. Horrible gender equality. Sweden is often celebrated as a feminist paradise, where women are paid the same as men, participate in politics and the workforce to the same degree as men, and are protected from all forms of violence and discrimination. To a certain extent, this is true. Sweden has certainly made great strides in improving gender equality. However, it has also created a society where men are often simultaneously disrespected, ignored, and resented. For example, the Swedish government has implemented quotas for the number of women that must be included on corporate boards and government committees. This has led to severe discrimination against men, and the implementation of an affirmative action program that gives women advantages in entering the workforce, even though men have higher rates of graduation from high school and college. Sweden also has one of the highest rates of sexual assault in the world, with nearly 1 in 3 Swedish women reporting that they have been raped. Meanwhile, the government has made it extremely difficult to prosecute rapists by refusing to allow DNA testing and administering polygraph tests. 9. The dark side of Sweden. An overregulated society. Sweden's overly strict regulation of society has led to a generation of people who are obedient to authority and follow the rules to a fault. This has resulted in a society that is incredibly timid and slow-moving. Swedes are often criticized for driving too slowly, eating too slowly, and even taking too long to go to the bathroom. People in Sweden eat slowly because they want to savor the flavor of their food, drive slowly because they want to make sure they don't break any laws, and take a long time in the bathroom because they don't want to be rude. In a country where people are so rigid and careful, it is easy to see how things could go wrong. For example, many Swedish children are so obedient that they never develop the ability to think for themselves and make their own decisions. They are constantly told what to do by their parents, teachers, and even strangers on the street. This can lead to children who grow up lacking confidence in themselves. Sweden has also become famous for its high suicide rate and its low birth rate. The low birth rate is largely due to the high cost of living in Sweden, as well as the fact that many Swedish women feel pressured not to start families until they have finished their education and established a career. If you love this type of videos, please subscribe to our channel, like and share this video with your friends, then hit the notification bell. That way you won't miss any of our future videos. Thank you.